Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into something stranger, sweatier, and frankly more baffling than your most awkward family reunion. The life, love, and lubricious disasters of King Ferdinand VII of Spain, the man history politely tries not to mention at dinner. If you thought your ex was high maintenance, get ready to meet a king whose hobbies included collecting wives, losing his country, and starring in scandals that would make a reality TV producer blush. Before you get too comfortable, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of thing. Drop a comment telling me which country you're listening from and, more importantly, what time it is for you. Now, dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise, and ease back into your suspiciously crumb-filled pillows. Let's get cozy, and maybe keep your feet under the covers. You never know what's crawling around in royal sheets. But let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it would actually be like to be a king so infamous for his appetites that even his courtiers wrote anonymous complaint letters? Did he ever have a normal breakfast? Did he ever wear pants that fit? How many times can one man get married before even the priest gets bored? Did Ferdinand's legendary libido have a royal schedule? Or did he just shout next, like a bored game show host? And what exactly does it feel like to wake up knowing the fate of Spain? And, quite possibly, the world's most unfortunate mattress rests in your hands. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1820. You're in Madrid, you're king, and the entire palace smells faintly of powder, disappointment, and ode to questionable decision-making. Welcome to the reign of Ferdinand VII. Good luck. Before he was the world's least eligible bachelor, Ferdinand was just a chubby-cheeked Bourbon baby dodging nannies and learning that royalty mostly means never wearing comfortable shoes. Your childhood games involve golden rattles, awkward family portraits, and a constant background hum of distant revolution. Let's set the scene. It's 1784. You, small, soft, suspiciously sticky, have just been born in the Palacio Real of El Escorial, a palace so big it takes 3 days and a GPS to find the bathroom. Your first memories are not gentle lullabies, but the echo of heavy footsteps and the world's draftiest marble floors. In the Bourbon household, every cradle comes with an audience. There are tutors for Latin, tutors for French, and a specialist in how not to drool during official portraits. Spoiler: you fail that last class. Your earliest toys are solid gold rattles and tiny swords, which frankly seem like a design flaw. Your crib is less a sleeping space and more a diplomatic meeting point. Ambassadors bring you silk bibs, courtiers debate your future, and the Queen Mother constantly tries to wipe jam off your cheeks in front of everyone. Meanwhile, your father, Charles IV, is busy arguing with your grandfather over whether a king should know how to play the violin, and your mother, Queen Maria Luisa, is inventing entirely new ways to hover. If you think playdates are fun, think again. Your friends are all related to you in some convoluted, vaguely alarming way. You spend more time practicing royal bows than actually playing, and the one time you try hide and seek, 4 footmen are sent into a panic because they think you've been kidnapped by a French spy. No pressure. Mealtimes are an ordeal. You are spoon-fed pureed delicacies by a rotation of nervous nurses, each terrified of spilling a single drop on your velvet bib. If you throw your peas, it sparks an international incident. If you burp, 3 courtiers make the sign of the cross. Someone is always watching, someone is always judging, and someone is definitely writing it all down in the world's most passive-aggressive diary. You learn early that being a Bourbon means always looking just a bit bored in every painting. Your portrait is commissioned before you even know how to sit up straight. The painter spends 2 hours arranging your curls, and another 4 painting out the snot bubble you heroically produced right as the session began. Congratulations, you have already failed at royal composure. But outside, the world is changing. Revolution simmers in France. Rumours of unrest drift in through the palace windows. and nobody tells you why the adults keep arguing in tight circles. Occasionally you catch whispers of guillotines, of dangerous ideas, of liberty and reform. You, however, are mostly concerned with teething and wondering why your shoes are so pointy. Education is rigorous, which is a polite way of saying you're never allowed to play outside unsupervised. Your tutors are obsessed with the classics. You recite Latin before you can count, learn the genealogy of every European monarch by age 6, and can flawlessly pronounce political instability while still struggling with please, no more cabbage. Your hobbies are not really yours. They are scheduled, supervised, and suspiciously similar to advanced diplomacy. Want to play with blocks? Sorry, today is fencing, embroidery, and how not to start a civil war before lunch. The palace itself is a labyrinth of echoing halls, faint candle smoke, and distant music. At night, you listen to the adults' nervous laughter, the servants' footsteps, and the endless creak of the floorboards under the weight of collective anxiety. You sometimes wish for a normal family, one that doesn't consult 5 astrologers before picking out your bedtime story. By the time you're 10, you've already attended more funerals than birthday parties, know how to curtsy in 5 languages, and are vaguely aware that the people are not huge fans of your family. Your main companions are a rotating cast of tutors, a constantly anxious wet nurse, and a small army of poodles in matching royal livery. And through it all, you remain the Bourbon baby, cherubic, pampered, and already just a little bit exhausted by the absurdity of royal life. The revolution is coming. For now, you just want a nap without the choir practicing next to your crib, and maybe, just once, to wear shoes that don't look like torture devices invented by a particularly vengeful cobbler. Welcome to the monarchy. Childhood was never going to be simple. Growing up in the Spanish court is a masterclass in passive aggression, conspiracy, and trying to remember which uncle you're not supposed to poison. Imagine every family dinner as a high-stakes episode of Succession, but with worse wigs. Let's set the table. You're Ferdinand, age somewhere between old enough to suspect everything and too young to openly refuse herring pudding. The palace is enormous, drafty, and populated by relatives who seem to multiply whenever the cook opens a fresh ham. Every room is a battleground. The wallpaper is velvet. The wine is endless. The gossip is relentless. Every time you hear a cough behind you, it could be a servant, or it could be a sign that another Bourbon family feud is about to break out over the soup. Breakfast is rarely peaceful. The king's brother, who always arrives late and always has opinions about your Latin homework, flings barbed compliments at your mother while swirling his chocolate. Your cousin pretends to faint to avoid a public scolding about her embroidery. Meanwhile, half the court is whispering about which royal is most likely to take a little trip to a quiet countryside estate, a euphemism for exile that everyone pretends is just a nice holiday. The other half is too busy passing notes and inventing new ways to look innocent while plotting. Your education in treachery begins early. You learn that there are 2 ways to survive a Bourbon court. Speak softly and carry a very large fan to hide your expressions. The nannies warn you not to trust anyone who offers you marzipan twice in a row, and they're right. Even dessert is a diplomatic maneuver. Accept the wrong sweet from the wrong aunt, and you'll be accused of siding with the Aragonese branch, which is the 18th century equivalent of rooting for the wrong football team at Thanksgiving. Holidays are a test of endurance. Christmas means 100 people in velvet breeches pretending they like each other, forced cheer echoing down marble corridors. Gifts are exchanged, but always with strings attached. You receive a miniature portrait of your cousin. You're supposed to admire it, but not too much, and definitely not more than your other cousin's slightly less flattering portrait. There are so many unwritten rules you need a secretary just to keep up with the emotional scorecard. Even the pets are political. The Queen's lapdog is allowed everywhere. The King's hunting falcon is not. Your pet turtle, an attempt at low-stakes companionship, is mysteriously replaced one day with a nearly identical but far grumpier turtle. You pretend not to notice. Every conversation is a coded message. How is your health, dear nephew? really means I heard you were sick and am already measuring the curtains for your bedroom. You're looking well is code for you look like you're plotting a coup, and I respect it. Sincerity is as rare as a fresh orange in February, and everyone acts like the silverware is bugged. You quickly master the art of being invisible in plain sight. If you're too clever, you're marked as a threat. If you're too dull, you're written off as useless. The trick is to look slightly bored and mildly agreeable, like someone who might faint at the sight of intrigue, but who is definitely writing down every word to use against you in 5 years. The adults don't hide their scheming. The palace is riddled with secret passageways and peepholes, and there's always a rumor that the kitchens are wired directly to the French ambassador's ears. You overhear arguments about taxes, marriage treaties, and whether or not cousin Juanito is technically a Bourbon or just someone who wandered in off the street and started eating cheese. Dinners are a production. The seating chart alone is a masterclass in diplomatic fencing. Sitting next to the wrong person can doom a trade agreement or accidentally start a rebellion in the colonies. The king drones on about proper etiquette while the queen throws daggers with her eyes, and somewhere in the shadows, a courtier quietly writes another letter to his lawyer. Despite the chaos, you start to understand that this is normal. Dysfunction is the Bourbon family business. Everyone is plotting, everyone is pretending, and the only way to survive is to smile, say nothing, and keep a mental list of which relatives are currently out of favor. By the time dessert is served, you're exhausted, but at least you survived another day. In the world of Team Bourbon, trust is a luxury no one can afford, and the Whigs really are terrible. One day you wake up and half of France is having breakfast in your palace. Napoleon wants your throne, your father is negotiating in another room, and you're mostly trying to figure out if you're still technically king or just the world's fanciest hostage. Let's rewind. You're barely out of your awkward teenage years, which in royal Spain means you're supposed to have at least 2 enemies, a suspicious moustache, and the constant suspicion that your morning cocoa is being stirred with someone else's agenda. It's 1808, and the palace is somehow even more crowded than usual. The usual crowd of cousins, advisors, and decorative lapdogs has been joined by French officers, each of whom is convinced you're secretly plotting against Napoleon. Spoiler. You are, but only in the sense that you wish he would take his boots off before walking on the palace carpets. The mood at breakfast is tense. Croissants are being served by servants who don't speak French, and you're pretty sure the kitchen is on its 3rd attempt at eggs à la Bonaparte. You look down the table and see your father, Charles IV, nervously twirling his moustache and pretending not to make eye contact with anyone, especially you. He's in the middle of negotiating with French diplomats, which mostly means nodding, sweating, and hoping no one asks about the state of the Spanish treasury. Meanwhile, Napoleon's representatives are everywhere, lounging in your chairs, inspecting the paintings, and making polite but pointed remarks about how lovely your palace is, almost as if they're measuring for new drapes. You begin to wonder if you're still king or just the designated tour guide for the French invasion. Your job, at least officially, is to maintain dignity. This means sitting very straight, speaking only when spoken to, and smiling politely as the French guests accidentally spill red wine on centuries-old tapestries. You try not to panic every time someone mentions abdication, which is quickly becoming everyone's favorite word. Right behind exile and who is that lurking in the corridor, the family drama reaches new heights. Your mother is weeping in the chapel. Your father is hiding behind official papers. And every cousin has a different theory about what you should do. One suggests fleeing in disguise. Another recommends bribing the French with access to the royal stables. You briefly consider hiding in the dumbwaiter until this all blows over. Napoleon himself is the elephant in the room, or, more accurately, the eagle. He is never actually present at these family meltdowns, preferring to issue orders from a safe distance while his minions deliver ultimatums in increasingly elaborate French. You are summoned repeatedly to talk things over with generals who speak in riddles, and always, always have more soldiers than you. Then comes the moment you dread, the abdication. First, your father abdicates in your favor. Then you, awkwardly and under considerable French pressure, abdicate in favor of Napoleon's brother Joseph. It's the Spanish version of musical chairs, except the music is the Marseillaise, and the last one left standing has to rule a country in open revolt. Now, you are technically king, untechnically captive, and officially confused. The French don't trust you, the Spanish don't trust you, and even the palace poodle is giving you suspicious looks. Meals become a silent contest to see who can look the most innocent, the least complicit, and the best at pretending to enjoy French cuisine. You lose all three. You're eventually invited to travel to Bayonne, France, for further negotiations. This is less a negotiation and more a polite kidnapping with extra paperwork. You are given a comfortable room with a suspicious number of locks, and the only reading material is a stack of unsigned abdication documents. By night, you lie awake and wonder what's happening back in Spain. Rumors swirl about rebellions, guerrilla fighters, and the Spanish people rising up against the French. The world outside is exploding, but your life is one endless diplomatic limbo, a parade of signatures, sullen dinners, and the dawning realization that nobody actually wants to give you your crown back. Through it all, you remain the center of the world's weirdest hostage crisis. You keep a stiff upper lip, practice your signature, just in case you need to abdicate again, and try to find solace in the only thing left that's truly yours, your extremely itchy ceremonial sash. If you're lucky, you might someday be king again. If you're unlucky, you'll just keep being the answer to a trivia question. Who lost Spain twice in his pajamas? Welcome to Spanish history's longest, least excellent adventure. The only thing worse than being a Bourbon at home is being a Bourbon abroad. You're sent into exile, again, sampling the international delicacies of boredom, homesickness, and anxiety pastries. Let's set the scene. You are Ferdinand, temporarily dethroned, permanently confused, and now, officially, the most unwanted tourist in Europe. Your holiday is less sun and sangria, more cold coffee and cold shoulders. You arrive in France with an entourage that includes 2 weeping aunts, 3 extremely suspicious bodyguards, and a suitcase full of letters you're not allowed to send. Every item you own smells faintly of mothballs, disappointment, and the kind of anxiety that can only be acquired by losing your throne to a Corsican in a funny hat. Your accommodations are, how shall we put this, decidedly unroyal. There's a view of the garden, but it's mostly just an angry goose and a gardener who won't make eye contact. The bed is lumpy. The sheets are crisp, which is a polite way of saying starched to the tensile strength of iron. If you thought royal life was full of luxury, try royal exile. You're lucky if you get a hot bath more than twice a month, and the only person willing to listen to your troubles is a maid who thinks you're just another displaced minor noble with a complicated mustache. The food is, well, French, but not the good kind, the exiled kind. You're served pastries that taste like homesickness, stews with ingredients you can't pronounce, and enough lukewarm wine to sedate a mid-sized pony. Every meal is a reminder that you used to have 3 kitchens, and now you're not allowed to sharpen your own cheese knife for security reasons. Your days settle into a routine. Wake up, regret it, stare out the window, try not to cry into your morning roll, and then embark on the endless tedium of waiting for news. You write letters, so many letters, to Spanish friends, British ambassadors, and that one cousin who might still owe you money. Sometimes you receive a reply, usually coded, always disappointing. The most exciting part of your week is the arrival of the Parisian newspapers, which mention you only in the context of royal embarrassment, political inconvenience, or local man still underwhelmed by French pillows. Social life is an adventure in humiliation. Other exiles occasionally invite you over for tea and mutual complaining, but there's always an undertone of competition. Who lost the bigger kingdom? Who has the worst supporters? Who's been poisoned most recently? You win most likely to never get their crown back, which is not nearly as comforting as it sounds. Evenings are long. The French evenings are famous for their joie de vivre, but yours are just famous for being quiet. You sit by the fire with a tepid mug of something that might be cocoa and definitely isn't happiness, staring into the flames and wondering if the embers are plotting against you. Sometimes you play cards with the staff, who always let you win, which only makes it worse. Other times you pace your tiny rooms, practicing speeches for your glorious return to Spain. Speeches no one will ever hear. Every so often, rumors swirl that you might be restored, that Napoleon is distracted, that Europe is feeling charitable. Each time you pack your bags, only to unpack them again 3 days later when the letter turns out to be another just kidding from the powers that be. You develop a nervous tic. You name your walking stick. You start giving pep talks to your own reflection, your only audience, and frankly, the only one who isn't plotting to depose you. Eventually, exile becomes a second skin. You learn which bakeries will sell you bread on credit, which locals won't snicker when you ask about the Spanish weather, and how to gracefully accept pity in 3 languages. You become an expert in disappointment, a champion of patience, and a world-class collector of rejection letters. And through it all, you wait. You wait for word from Spain, for a revolution, for an invitation, for something, anything that will make you more than just a bourbon with bad luck and excellent posture. Until then, your kingdom is a 3-room apartment in a city that mostly wants you to stay quiet, eat your pastries, and please not start another war. Welcome to exile, the royal edition. Less vacation, more extended layover in limbo. After years away, you're back. The people cheer, sort of. The nobles sigh, definitely. The palace staff immediately check if the locks on their bedroom doors still work. Let's set the stage. You, Ferdinand VII, former exile and current homecoming monarch, are paraded through the streets of Madrid in a carriage that smells faintly of mothballs and stale optimism. The crowds line the avenues, waving flags and banners, but you can't help noticing how many of the cheers are suspiciously polite. More thank goodness something happened than long live the king. Every third person looks as if they're secretly wondering if you're going to stick around this time or disappear again as soon as France coughs. The royal guards are back in formation, brushing dust off their uniforms and trying to remember how to salute properly. The local bishop is already planning a celebratory mass, and the city's bakers have been told to double their bread output. Why? Because every major Spanish event, including royal homecomings, means only one thing: lots of waiting and even more eating. Your triumphant return is a logistical nightmare. You haven't set foot in the palace in years, so nothing is where you left it. The throne room curtains have faded from regal crimson to ambiguous rosé, and there's a new draft in every hallway. Your favourite portrait is now hanging next to a slightly wonky mirror, and your slippers have been chewed by a mouse with an apparent taste for imported leather. The palace staff, bless them, have mastered the fine art of looking busy while watching your every move with open dread. The head butler makes a show of inspecting the silverware every time you pass by, as if you might try to pawn it to pay off your exile gambling debts. The footmen whisper about your sleeping habits. The chambermaids form prayer circles, and the royal cook has already prepared 3 different emergency menus just in case you decide to revive any old favourites from your pre-exile days. You hold your first royal dinner, and it's awkward enough to make a high school reunion look like a comedy festival. Nobles fill the banquet hall with nervous laughter and pointed questions. The air is thick with expectation, suspicion, and a surprising amount of garlic. Your cousins jostle for the best seats. The most important nobles jockey for your ear. And your mother just wants to know if you've remembered to eat enough fruit. The conversation is less, what are your plans for Spain? And more so, are we about to have another revolution? Or every topic is a minefield. The new constitution? Everyone is for it, against it, or too confused to pick a side. The French? No one wants to talk about them, and yet, somehow, everyone does. Even the weather is controversial. Did you bring the rain with you from France? a baron mutters, before quickly apologizing and stuffing his mouth with bread. You try to act kingly, but the pressure is immense. Every decision is second-guessed. Every announcement is analyzed for hidden meaning. Are you a reformer? Are you a reactionary? Are you still a Bourbon, or just a temporary placeholder until someone with more charisma or a better moustache comes along? The newspapers speculate wildly. The gossip in the markets is even wilder. Behind closed doors, the old power brokers argue about how much authority you should actually have. Should the king rule? Should the people rule? Should anyone rule, or should Spain just take a nap and hope the problems sort themselves out? You listen, you nod, you make speeches about unity and tradition, but deep down, you know everyone is just waiting to see if you'll trip on the palace steps. And let's not forget the welcome home gifts, paintings of questionable taste, ceremonial swords that are more dangerous than decorative, and enough wine to float the royal barge down the Manzanares. The one thing nobody gives you: a simple instruction manual for putting Spain back together after years of chaos. At night, you wander the drafty halls, trying to remember what it felt like to belong here. The palace is bigger than you recall, the staff more nervous, the walls echoing with old grievances. You're king again, but it feels less like coming home and more like moving into someone else's unfinished jigsaw puzzle. So yes, you're back. The people are anxious, the nobles are scheming, and even the palace cats look skeptical. Welcome home, Your Majesty. Good luck, you're going to need it. Dinner at your palace is a sensory journey. Food, more wine, and a running tally of how many forkfuls you can eat before starting an argument with a cousin. There is always stew, and it is never quite hot enough. Let's set the table, and try not to trip over a footman or a stray lapdog on your way to the chair. If you're Ferdinand VII, you know that eating isn't just a necessity. It's an Olympic event in passive aggression, competitive chewing, and showy fork placement. The table is groaning under the weight of plates, goblets, decanters, and a collection of questionable relics from Spain's culinary past. Picture a buffet designed by someone who heard about vegetables but was too suspicious to include them. The menu never really changes: stew, hunks of bread, roasted meats, and enough garlic to keep an entire French army at bay. There's a mountain of cheese sweating quietly in the corner, an entire squadron of olives, and a pie so mysterious that even the head cook can't remember what went into it. The only consistent ingredient in the royal kitchen is drama. Your cook, a veteran of 3 coups and 1 nervous breakdown, insists on taste testing every dish, ostensibly for poison, but really because they don't trust the junior kitchen staff with seasoning. You take your place at the head of the table, which is less seat of power and more throne of chaos. The silverware is so heavy it could double as a weapon in a pinch. And the plates are adorned with gold, intricate patterns, and occasionally the faint scent of old gravy that refuses to leave no matter how hard the scullery maid scrubs. Your mother sits to your right, always ready to critique your posture. Your latest wife, number who even knows at this point, sits to your left, already giving you that look that says, "Please don't talk about politics with Uncle Jaime again." The eating begins with a flurry of servers who seem to appear out of nowhere, pouring wine, presenting dishes, and somehow always standing in the exact spot you want to rest your elbow. The first course is always soup. It is always too cold. You pretend not to notice, but everyone at the table exchanges knowing glances. Is it a test? Is it a metaphor? Is it simply the result of a palace kitchen so far from the dining room that by the time the soup arrives, it's had time to reflect on its poor life choices? Conversation is a contact sport. Cousin Alfonso tries to explain why garlic is a sign of true Spanish nobility, while someone at the far end of the table is loudly critiquing French wine. You sip, you chew, you nod, and you keep one eye on the footmen, who are clearly taking bets on who will spill first. Dinner in the palace is never quiet. There are always arguments about politics, inheritance, or whose turn it is to feed the royal peacock. Inevitably, a wine glass tips, someone shrieks, and the hound under the table gets another free meal. You're famous for your appetite, and the court keeps count. There are rumors that you once ate an entire side of beef before dessert and that you could outdrink a Russian ambassador. Is it true? Who knows? By the end of most meals, the only thing everyone agrees on is that you've asked for the stew to be reheated at least twice. The kitchen staff have a rotation system. One team stirs the stew, another team delivers it, and a third team is on hand to run for the apothecary, just in case. Your table manners are legendary, but not always in a good way. Forks are optional. Napkins are rarely used for anything except dramatically dabbing at tears of laughter or rage. You've been known to steal bread rolls from under your guests' noses and launch olives with frightening precision when bored. The court chronicles debate whether you're an innovator or just very hungry. After the third course, spirits are high, but so is the noise. Toasts are raised to Spain, to family, to whatever new alliance you're pretending to celebrate this week. Inevitably, someone brings up succession, and suddenly you're arguing with your cousin over dessert while the rest of the table pretends to admire the tapestries. When dinner finally ends, everyone is exhausted, overfed, and mildly traumatized. You, on the other hand, are already thinking about a midnight snack. After all, a king needs energy for all that arguing, negotiating, and, occasionally, ruling. Welcome to dinner at the palace, where the food is never quite hot enough, but the drama is always served piping. You say I do for the first time. Nobody warns you that being Ferdinand's wife comes with more paperwork, less romance, and a non-zero chance of public scandal by breakfast. Let's set the mood. You are young, crowned, and, if we're being honest, about as emotionally prepared for matrimony as a sheep is for its first haircut. Your bride arrives in a whirlwind of silk, perfume, and vague expectations. Everyone smiles. The bells ring. The entire city of Madrid comes out to celebrate, or, more accurately, to gossip. Is she pretty? Will she survive? Who's already placing bets on the divorce? You try to look noble as you pose for endless paintings, but your mind is already wandering to the dinner menu. From the very start, royal marriage is not so much a partnership as it is a public sport. There are formal ceremonies, so many ceremonies. You kneel, you stand, you kiss the ring, you sign documents in triplicate while a bishop looks on, humming suspiciously. It's less till death do us part, and more till the paperwork runs out of space. Your new wife, Maria Antonia of Naples, does her best to look hopeful, but you can tell she's already clocked that your hobbies include political crisis, overeating, and wearing hats that terrify small children. The wedding night is a production worthy of the opera. There's a royal audience, a court physician lurking in the hallway just in case, and enough candlelight to qualify as a fire hazard. If you imagined romance, think again. The court gossip mill is in overdrive. Every sigh, every sneeze, every awkward silence will be discussed at breakfast, and possibly published in a pamphlet by noon. You're not so much a husband as a headline. Day-to-day married life in the palace is a minefield of etiquette, paperwork, and peril. There are rules about who can enter your rooms, how loudly you can argue, and which prayers you must recite before dinner if you hope to avoid setting a bad example for the monarchy. Your wife receives a 50-page manual on proper royal comportment. You receive 3 pages and a stern lecture about the dangers of overindulging in marzipan. The royal couple's schedule is mapped out down to the minute. You attend banquets. You go to mass. You wave politely from the balcony and try to look like you're in love, or at least not about to file for annulment. Of course, the whole court is watching. Every morning, the palace halls are abuzz with speculation. Did the princess smile at breakfast? Did Ferdinand say something scandalous at dinner? Did anyone see him sneaking out to the kitchen at midnight? Every time you argue about politics, about soup temperature, about whose turn it is to pick the next patron saint for Spain, a maid will overhear, a butler will make a note, and within an hour, your mother will be demanding an explanation. Romance, such as it is, comes in brief flashes, an accidental shared smile, a private joke about your cousin's ridiculous wig, a rare moment alone in the garden before another servant arrives to inform you that the Portuguese ambassador is here, and he's already offended by the flower arrangements. Marriage is supposed to bring stability, but if anything, it just multiplies your problems. Now, instead of only your enemies plotting against you, you have to contend with your in-laws, who send letters full of suggestions and occasionally urgent demands. Your wife, for her part, does her best to adapt. She learns the Spanish language, survives the Spanish food, and even manages to tolerate the Spanish weather, which alternates between rainy disappointment and unforgiving sunburn. She develops an impressive poker face for court banquets and learns which courtiers can be bribed with chocolate. But even the strongest spirits can't hold up forever in the face of constant scrutiny. The saddest truth of all is that, for all the spectacle, royal marriage in Ferdinand's world is mostly a lonely business. Genuine affection has to compete with politics, tradition, and a never-ending parade of paperwork. You're not just Ferdinand's wife. You're a walking treaty, a living symbol, and a daily headline. By the end of your first year, you've gained a closet full of slightly too tight gowns, a stack of unsigned letters home, and an advanced degree in pretending everything is perfectly fine. But don't worry, there's always tomorrow's scandal to look forward to. And if you think one royal marriage is complicated, just wait. There are more wives and more paperwork on the way. Marriage number 2, then 3, then... Wait, which one is this? You begin to lose track. Every honeymoon suite has a faint sense of déjà vu and a strong smell of candle wax. Let's be honest. By this point, you, Ferdinand VII, have spent more time at the altar than some priests. If there's a royal frequent flyer program for marriages, you're definitely in the platinum tier. The palace seamstresses no longer even bother to embroider new initials on the monogrammed towels. Each new wedding is less an event, more an ongoing tradition, like Easter, or someone spilling soup in the royal dining room. The only ones excited are the florists. Your second marriage arrives before you've fully processed the end of the first. Political necessity, family pressure, or possibly just a vague sense that someone in the room is glaring at you. Whatever the cause, you say "I do" once more. This time, your bride is Maria Isabel of Portugal, and everyone's expectations are, frankly, lower. The court is tired, the bishops are bored, and the painter tasked with commemorating the event is just reusing last year's background with a slightly different color palette. The ceremony is another marathon of standing, kneeling, signing, and smiling for so many portraits your jaw aches for a week. After the festivities, you are both paraded through the city in a carriage that smells strongly of lilies, nervous anticipation, and the faint whiff of last time's confetti. You wave to the crowd, who wave back with polite confusion, and you try to remember which cousin's name you're supposed to forget today. Marriage number 3 sneaks up on you like a headache. Maria Isabel is gone, and the court is once again abuzz with matchmaking mania. By now, the palace staff have their own betting pool on who your next spouse will be. Rumors swirl. Will it be a German princess? Another Bourbon cousin? That one noblewoman who can outdrink the entire cavalry? For the record, the smart money is always on someone politically convenient and very, very patient. By now, the wedding planning is less creative. The musicians recycle their set list. The cooks simply double the last menu. And the royal pastry chef makes a cake so large, it's rumored to contain a hidden staircase. You stand at the altar once more, exchanging vows with Maria Josepha Amalia of Saxony. She's nervous, you're nervous, and the priest is now on a first-name basis with your entire extended family. Each new wife arrives at the palace with hopes, dreams, and, crucially, a set of instructions on how to navigate Ferdinand's quirks. Don't bring up French wine at dinner. Pretend you don't notice the collection of porcelain frogs in the study. Always agree with his opinions on stew. You do your best to be charming, but the weight of expectation and paperwork hangs heavy over every royal breakfast. The honeymoon suites have lost their magic. The beds all creak in exactly the same place. The wallpaper is identical, the view from the balcony unchanged, and even the bouquets of flowers look like they've been swapped out of storage. You attempt small talk, but each new wife is, understandably, wary. She's heard the rumors, survived the advice, and probably already started drafting a letter home that begins with "send help" and extra chocolate. Of course, the real pressure is on producing an heir. Each marriage brings renewed hope and renewed scrutiny. Courtiers speculate, doctors hover, and every time you sneeze, someone sends for the royal physician just in case. Privacy is non-existent. Your personal life is public property, dissected daily by everyone from bishops to bakers. If you look tired, it's news. If your wife looks tired, it's front-page news. By the time you reach your fourth marriage, yes, fourth, the process has become almost mechanical. Your bride, Maria Christina of the Two Sicilies, is young, clever, and most importantly, determined to survive. The two of you manage to carve out moments of cautious camaraderie, whispered jokes, shared eye rolls at tedious ceremonies, a mutual understanding that the real love story here is between you and the kitchen staff who keep the chocolate coming. Serial matrimony, for Ferdinand, is less about romance and more about resilience. You learn to be polite, flexible, and ready to pose for yet another happy couple painting. You try not to take bets on how long it will last, but you do keep a personal record of the fastest annulment rumor to circulate after a wedding. The answer is 3 days. Even the courtiers are impressed. So here you are, 4 marriages, countless ceremonies, and the uneasy realization that in the end, your heart belongs mostly to the palace stew, and the quiet hope that this one, just maybe, will stick. Every night in the palace is a tangled web of intrigue, gossip, and servants desperately avoiding eye contact. Your romantic life is less Tinder date and more Game of Thrones with extra paperwork. Let's dim the chandeliers and pull the heavy velvet curtains closed, because once the sun sets in Ferdinand's palace, the real negotiations begin. Forget hearts and flowers. This is 19th century royal Spain, where romance is conducted in whispers, side glances, and enough anxiety to power the royal wine cellar for a decade. If you thought power was played out in council chambers, think again. The most critical alliances, betrayals, and shocking revelations happen in bedrooms, behind locked doors, and occasionally beneath the world's most judgmental canopy bed. First, there's the matter of spouses. Plural. You have them, you've lost them, you're on your 3rd or 4th, and every marriage comes with its own set of rules and spies. Wives receive more scrutiny than royal decrees. Every sigh, every cold shoulder, every late-night cough is interpreted by the court as a possible sign of alliance or revolt. You try to keep up with who's speaking to whom, who's feigning illness, and which cousin is currently taking the waters in order to avoid awkward conversations at breakfast. The courtiers are the true artists of palace intrigue. Their jobs? To fan the flames of rumor, manufacture drama out of thin air, and, if possible, maneuver themselves closer to your royal favor, preferably by being in the right hallway at the wrong time. Gossip flows faster than the manzanares in springtime. A maid glimpses a shadow in the wrong corridor, and by dawn the entire palace knows you're planning to elope with a duchess or exile your favorite chef for excessive garlic. You quickly realize that in the Bourbon bedroom, privacy is a myth. Your chambers are guarded, yes, but not from outsiders, rather from curious insiders. Servants lurk in alcoves, courtiers invent urgent business at all hours, and someone is always accidentally entering at just the wrong moment. You once caught a footman under the bed, claiming he was looking for a lost handkerchief. To this day, you suspect he was actually taking notes for the ambassador from Vienna. Every relationship is complicated. A flirtation with a lady-in-waiting can turn into a week of angry pamphlets, secret letters, and icy stares across the ballroom. Your actual wives, meanwhile, must play their own games, jockeying for attention, gifts, and a modicum of security in a world where affection is as reliable as the Spanish postal service. Sometimes they band together in solidarity, Other times they compete in a silent contest of passive-aggressive lacework and cryptic comments at dinner. The rumors about your appetites grow wilder by the day. Did you really try to install a secret passageway between your rooms and the guest wing? Did you once serenade a noblewoman from the garden, dressed as a shepherd? No one knows for sure. The only thing everyone agrees on is that the palace is never dull, and that servants tiptoe with the wary resignation of people who have seen far, far too much. Politics and pleasure are hopelessly entwined. Every romantic encounter is weighed against possible alliances, future children, and the ever-present threat of scandal. Your affections can tip the balance of power in court, create overnight enemies, or inspire a song that the whole city will hum for months. You've accidentally started 2 feuds and 1 fashion trend, simply by sending a rose to the wrong person. And then, of course, there are the spies. Always the spies. Some are obvious, some are clever, and some are so deeply embedded you're not sure which side they're on. Is your valet loyal to you, or to your latest wife? Is the seamstress in league with the French? Did your poodle really just bark when you mentioned the word revolution? Every night, as you attempt to fall asleep in your enormous but suspiciously lumpy royal bed, you wonder who will be whispering about you by sunrise. Will it be your rivals, your allies, your staff, or just the eternally disappointed ghosts of past queens? In Ferdinand's Spain, love is never simple, lust is never private, and power is always lurking just behind the bedroom door, probably with a notebook. And so you drift off to a sleep filled with intrigue, side-eye, and the certain knowledge that, come morning, the only thing more complicated than your love life will be your breakfast seating chart. The official marriage is only the beginning. There are mistresses, secret letters, and the odd surprise serenade from someone you're fairly sure is on the palace payroll. Let's dim the candles and tiptoe into the shadowy wing of the palace, where rules are more like suggestions, and loyalty is measured in secrets, not titles. If marriage is the main event, your romantic side quests are where the real action and confusion happens. For Ferdinand VII, navigating mistresses isn't just a royal pastime, it's a logistical challenge requiring more planning than a small war. Mistresses come with the territory. You're king, after all, and history expects a little extracurricular enthusiasm. But keeping things discreet, that's a problem no king has ever solved. The palace is a hive of suspicious glances, unexplained bouquets, and servants moving about with the haunted look of people who have seen too many silk stockings left in the wrong rooms. Even your most trusted footmen, experts in the art of not noticing things, now have a permanent case of the side eyes. Each mistress has her own story. Some are ambitious nobles, with family trees longer than your to-do list. Others are actresses, musicians, or, scandal of scandals, commoners with excellent hair and dangerously sharp wit. The palace staff have a ranking system, discreetly updating the odds on who will last the season, who will earn a title, and who will be banished for excessive ornamentation. It's less The Bachelor and more Survivor, royal edition with slightly fewer coconuts and a lot more embroidery. Secret letters are the true currency of courtly romance. Your desk overflows with flowery notes, artfully folded, dusted with perfume, and containing enough double meanings to make a poet weep. Delivering these missives requires a covert army of page boys and at least one extremely loyal house cat. Every successful rendezvous requires the coordination of guards, musicians, and sometimes a strategically placed ficus plant. It's not cheating if it's technically a diplomatic reception, right? Occasionally, you find yourself the recipient of a surprise serenade. Music drifting up from the palace gardens just as you're pretending to read state papers. Is it a passionate tribute from a clandestine lover, or is it just the harpist getting in some after-hours practice? You're never quite sure, but you nod along as if you are. Nothing says kingly mystique like gazing pensively into the middle distance while someone in a powdered wig plays a suspiciously romantic melody. The court, naturally, loves nothing more than speculating about your side quests. Are you smitten? Is it true love? Or are you just bored between treaties? Every hallway conversation, every side glance at dinner is scrutinized. Nobles who want to curry favor suddenly take up poetry or volunteer to supervise the palace gardens. Even your confessor has questions, though he wisely couches them in Latin. Managing so many delicate connections takes skill, or, at the very least, a lot of apologizing. Gifts are exchanged in secret, lockets, love notes, scandalously decadent chocolates. Some mistresses hope for marriage, others for a pension, a country estate, or just the world's fanciest jewelry box. There's always the risk that today's beloved will become tomorrow's exiled cautionary tale. Discretion is recommended, but rarely practiced. Of course, politics and pleasure are never far apart. Alliances are forged over candlelight, rivalries born out of jealousy. A well-timed affair can tip the balance of power or doom a diplomatic mission. You learn quickly that the heart wants what it wants, but the royal council wants plausible deniability and absolutely no more musical interludes during cabinet meetings. For you, Ferdinand, the endless side quests are both thrilling and exhausting. Every day is a balancing act, juggling official duties, passionate escapades, and the careful management of palace gossip. You become adept at making grand romantic gestures and equally grand apologies. You invent a dozen new ways to say, "I promise," she means nothing, while already composing your next love letter. At the end of the day, you return to your royal chambers, where the only constant companion is the knowledge that somewhere, someone is whispering your name, and someone else is hiding under your bed with a notepad. You drift off to sleep, wondering what tomorrow's love story, or scandal, will bring, and whether the cook will ever forgive you for serenading his wife by accident. Such is life for a king with an active social calendar. Half romance, half farce, and always performed under the watchful gaze of history. If there's one thing you can say about Ferdinand, it's that he was never underdressed. Overdressed? Absolutely. You now own more lace than sense. Let's take a leisurely walk-in closet tour, because if you're Ferdinand VII, dressing for dinner is less a daily routine and more a three-act play. Your royal wardrobe isn't just for keeping warm or looking decent, it's a full-contact sport. Every garment is a statement, every ruffle a risk, every pair of silk stockings an opportunity for your rivals to judge you in silence, and occasionally not in silence at all. The only thing heavier than your royal mantle is the unspoken pressure to never, ever repeat an outfit, at least not in the same week. Start with the basics. Shirts. Not the kind you toss on before a run to the market. These are hand-stitched, imported, and so overloaded with lace cuffs and embroidery that they'd make even Marie Antoinette ask if maybe you're overdoing it. Every morning, your valet presents a fresh selection. Do you want the white one with the gold trim? The blue one with pearl buttons? The red one with weight? Is that a small family of moths? You quickly learn to choose by weight. The heavier the garment, the more royal you look, and the less likely you are to make it through the day without sweating through at least one layer. Then, the outerwear. Coats and jackets, all tailored so tightly that breathing is a calculated risk. Ferdinand never met a frock coat he didn't want to add an extra ribbon or six to. Buttons? Never enough buttons. Epaulettes? Yes, but only if they're visible from across the plaza. You're not just trying to impress Spain, you're trying to intimidate the weather. Accessories are where things get truly out of hand. You possess more hats than some towns have goats. There are bicorns, tricorns, cocked hats, hats for parades, hats for mourning, hats for it looks like rain but maybe not. And every hat comes with a plume, a feather, or, on the wildest occasions, a jewel the size of a chicken's egg. Every feather is carefully selected to stand taller and sadder than the one on your cousin's head. Jewelry, of course, is essential. There are rings for every finger and then some. Your signet ring alone weighs more than some of your diplomatic responsibilities. You wear so many chains and medallions you're at constant risk of becoming a one-man chime every time you enter a room. You once tried to tone it down for a funeral, and were immediately asked if you were feeling unwell. Let's not forget shoes. Ferdinand's shoes are, like his politics, elaborate and usually uncomfortable. Buckles are mandatory. Silk is preferable. Height? The more the merrier. After all, a king should never be less than 3 inches taller than his tallest rival, even if it means teetering around the palace like a distracted stork. Getting dressed is a royal event in itself. You stand, arms out, while a small army of valets, maids, and nervous tailors circle, fuss, and occasionally argue over which sash best says monarch and which accidentally says opera singer on opening night. Every button fastened is an opportunity for a compliment, a critique, or a whispered palace rumour. Once, your valet spent 20 minutes adjusting your collar only for your cousin to remark, "Bold choice," with a kind of smirk that could curdle cream. And then there's punctuality. Being Ferdinand means never arriving on time, but always arriving in style. If you're late, it's not an accident, it's an entrance. You sweep into rooms trailing silk, feathers, and an aura of scented anxiety. Courtiers turn, bows deepen, and somewhere, someone scribbles a note about the audacity of lavender. Of course, all this finery has its drawbacks. Eating soup is a hazard, lace sleeves, beware. Dancing is athletic. Try spinning with 15 pounds of gold braid on your chest. And, inevitably, there's that moment every night when you realize you're more dressed up than the oil paintings. Still, if you're Ferdinand, fashion is your armor, your power move, and your excuse for absolutely everything. Why did you miss council? Wardrobe malfunction. Why did you start a war with France? Well, you simply couldn't let their king outlace you. So you strut, you pose, and you sweat quietly through another day as the most overdressed man in Europe. Is it comfortable? Never. Is it dignified? Sometimes. Is it unforgettable? Absolutely. Welcome to the world of royal style. May your ribbons never unravel and your rivals never outshine you. The people talk, the newspapers whisper, and you try very hard to look innocent while inventing new ways to blame France for your personal problems. It's another morning in Madrid, and your coffee is served with a generous side of scandal. Before you've even finished your toast, a servant delivers the latest batch of pamphlets and newspapers, each one fluttering with wild rumours and gleeful speculation about your every move. You're Ferdinand VII, and if being king means anything, it means you are always the centre of attention, especially when things go wrong. And things, to be fair, go wrong a lot. The palace halls echo with whispers. Who was that mysterious lady spotted in the gardens at midnight? Was that really your cousin disguised as a nun leaving through the servants' entrance? Is it true you banned the national anthem last week because the orchestra played it out of tune? Every mishap, misunderstanding, and wardrobe malfunction is headline material for the growing army of Madrid's writers, poets, and professional gossips. Your court is its own perpetual scandal generator. Someone is always eloping, absconding, or simply being found in the wrong corridor at the wrong time. The grand tradition of noble discretion has been replaced by an Olympic-level sport of passing notes, dropping hints, and accidentally leaking embarrassing details to the press. There are entire taverns whose main business is inventing jokes at your expense. But nothing compares to the printed word. Newspapers and handbills fly through the city like flocks of judgmental pigeons. Each one claims to have the inside scoop. King Ferdinand's new diet. Does it involve wine for breakfast? Palace footman vanishes, last seen with royal biscuit tin. Queen faints at banquet, too much lace or too much king. Some are true, most are not, but all are read with relish by the public, who now feel as entitled to your secrets as you are to their taxes. You quickly learn the art of crisis management. When a particularly juicy rumour surfaces, say, that you've spent the treasury on silk waistcoats for your dog, you gather your advisors for emergency damage control. Someone always suggests blaming the French. It's simple, effective, and frankly, nobody likes them right now anyway. Before lunch, Every embarrassing slip can be pinned on foreign intrigue, Napoleonic saboteurs, or the ever-popular bad translation from the French. You try to look innocent at official events, but the harder you try, the more suspicious you seem. Your attempts at public speeches devolve into a game of dodgeball with the press. If you stammer, the papers call you nervous. If you crack a joke, they say you're flippant. If you trip on your cloak, you're unfit to rule. You develop a repertoire of royal expressions. The concerned eyebrow, the weary sigh, and the oh look, a pigeon distraction. Your family does not help. Between feuding uncles, ambitious cousins, and wives with their own public relations strategies, the royal house is a headline factory. Even your pets get in on the action, once causing a diplomatic incident when your parrot repeated something it heard at a cabinet meeting. The less said about the goat that wandered into the treasury, the better. The public, for their part, eats it up. They pass judgment from balconies and behind fans, delighting in your escapades and groaning at your apologies. Children play king and scandal in the street, inventing new ways for their imaginary monarch to fall off his horse or accidentally start a revolution with a poorly timed sneeze. Yet, for all the drama, you persevere. Scandal becomes the background music of your reign. You adapt, sometimes even outmaneuver the rumors. When caught red-handed, you shrug, you wink, you issue a proclamation about national unity and hope nobody asks too many questions. It's a precarious dance, but after all, if they're talking about you, at least you haven't been forgotten. And so, the parade continues. Today's scandal is tomorrow's forgotten headline. And you, Ferdinand, are left to juggle your crown, your dignity, and the persistent suspicion that somewhere, somehow, France is behind it all. Welcome to the age of royal tabloid. Smile for the sketches, Your Majesty. The city is watching. When the sun goes down, the real entertainment begins. Dancing, drinking, games, and the terrifying prospect of impromptu poetry readings. Let's slip out of the stuffy council chamber and into the echoing marble halls where the torches flicker, the wine flows, and the nobles let down their powdered hair. By day, the palace is a fortress of etiquette and suspicion. By night, it transforms into the 19th century equivalent of a cruise ship talent show, if the ship were captained by Ferdinand VII, whose definition of fun usually involves at least 3 types of punch and someone being gently humiliated. It all starts with supper winding down. The grand hall is cleared of half-eaten stews and nervously nibbled desserts, replaced by trays of candied fruits, nuts, and enough pastries to fund a small revolution. The musicians retune their instruments with dramatic flair, harpsichords, violins, the world's tiniest harp, and suddenly, the air is thick with the unmistakable scent of burning beeswax and impending regret. You, as king, set the tone for the festivities. On a good night, you saunter into the ballroom late, cloaked in velvet and just enough mystery to make everyone speculate about your real plans. Sometimes you kick things off with a toast to the glory of Spain, the resilience of the court, and the continued strength of our royal shoes. Everyone laughs, even if they're not sure why. There's always a slight anxiety. Will tonight's party end with a waltz or with someone challenging the ambassador of Naples to a duel over the last almond tart? Dancing is obligatory. Whether you're talented or tragically too left-footed, everyone is expected to swirl around the floor. You, Ferdinand, make a brave show of it, sometimes managing to remember the steps, other times relying on a creative interpretation of the minuet that involves more bowing than strictly necessary. The nobles pair up, switching partners, fanning themselves furiously, and occasionally whispering snide remarks about each other's shoes. If you trip over your cape, which happens often, the orchestra valiantly plays louder to cover the laughter. If you get tired of dancing, and you always do, the games begin. Cards are popular, and so are dice, chess, and the delightfully vicious gossip and consequence, in which the loser must recite an embarrassing secret or, worse, perform a short, dramatic reading of a truly awful love letter. You've won at cards exactly twice, you've lost at gossip and consequence more times than you care to admit, leading to a legendary performance of a poem allegedly written about your second wife's eyebrows. As the night deepens, inhibitions vanish, and the party shifts into its true form, competitive toasting. The courtiers compete to see who can deliver the most elaborate, heartfelt, or hilarious toast, often devolving into increasingly wild stories about hunting trips, family ghosts, or that time someone's wig caught fire during a royal baptism. Toasts to the king, the queen, the cooks, and, once, memorably, the palace cat, all pass around the table. You accept the praise and roll your eyes at the more outlandish exaggerations. Deep down, you know the best stories are the ones that never make it into the official records. And then, the poetry. Oh, the poetry. No palace party is complete without at least 3 nobles, usually with questionable musical talent, deciding that midnight is the perfect time to debut their latest ode. You clap politely, you nod. You make a mental note never to eat turnips again if you hear one more sonnet about the moon's longing. If you're lucky, the poetry is short. If not, you start plotting ways to accidentally set off the fire alarm with a discreet candle. Meanwhile, some guests sneak off for quieter amusements, sneaking into the kitchens, plotting minor rebellions over pastries, or playing hide-and-seek in the portrait gallery. You find yourself wandering from group to group, offering a word here, a wink there, and, if necessary, a stern warning to stop using the royal chamber pots for bobbing apples. By the time dawn glimmers on the palace rooftops, the music fades, the servants start cleaning, and the survivors of the after-party stumble back to their chambers, shoes in hand and pride slightly dented. You, Ferdinand, collapse into bed, head spinning from wine, feet throbbing from dancing, and soul just a little lighter for having survived another night of royal revelry. Welcome to palace nightlife. The after-party is over until tomorrow night, when it starts all over again. You would think that royal beds are luxurious. In reality, they're creaky, overcrowded, and sometimes have secret drawers for hiding embarrassing correspondence. Let's step past the golden doors and take a peek into the sacred, scandalous, and surprisingly squeaky inner sanctum of Ferdinand VII, the royal bedroom. It sounds glamorous. After all, you're king, you can have any bed you want. Why not one the size of a Spanish galleon, piled with silk pillows and draped in enough velvet to carpet half of Madrid? Well, that's the fantasy. The reality is something else. First, the bed itself. It's enormous, yes, but only because it has to accommodate not only you but also your wife, or whichever wife is on duty. Several extra blankets to fend off the unpredictable drafts, at least one lapdog with delusions of grandeur, and the occasional courtier who falls asleep during an evening audience and is simply left there out of politeness. The mattress is stuffed with horsehair, straw, and the crushed dreams of royal upholsterers, and it creaks alarmingly every time you shift your royal posterior. Forget memory foam. The only thing your bed remembers is every argument ever had between Bourbon cousins. The canopy is a marvel, a towering mountain of velvet, brocade, and gold fringe, so heavy that if it ever collapsed, it would be a minor architectural disaster. You lie beneath it at night, wondering if the fluttering shadows are moths, ghosts, or simply another overambitious footman dusting at midnight. The curtains are supposed to block out the light and the prying eyes of servants. Instead, they trap the air and every smell from the kitchen below: roasted onions, singed lace, and that peculiar whiff of anxiety that seems to drift in after every scandal. As for privacy, good luck. Every palace bedroom is part sleeping chamber, part throughway, and part office. Pages rush in and out with urgent messages. Advisors barge in to request your signature on some tedious edict. And wives, current, former, or future, may materialize at any hour to discuss, at length, why you should fire the choir director or the pastry chef. Even the pets get in on the action. Dogs snore at your feet, parrots judge your snoring, and the royal cat has claimed the foot of the bed as its hereditary domain. Storage is a hazard of royal life. There are secret drawers in every nightstand, desk, and headboard, all overflowing with love letters, state documents, and half-written lists of people to exile. If you ever want to retrieve your favorite nightcap, be prepared to dig through a stack of unsigned decrees, last month's gossip pamphlets, and at least 2 crumpled apology notes meant for your latest wife. Occasionally, you find a snack from last week, which the mice have politely ignored out of respect for royal property. Furniture regret is a constant theme. Your enormous wardrobe is both too small for your endless lace shirts and too large. It won't fit through the door if you ever decide to move out in a hurry. The chairs look elegant but are engineered to maximize spinal regret. The ottoman is rumoured to have once belonged to an Austrian archduke, but now mostly serves as a tripping hazard on late-night bathroom trips. Once, a visiting duke asked if you'd considered something a bit less baroque. You exiled him. Let's not forget the royal clock, which chimes every quarter hour and is apparently set to maximum anxiety. Just as you're drifting off to sleep, it reminds you that you're late for something: an audience, a meal, a reconciliation with your mother-in-law. Restful sleep is always one distant bell away from a diplomatic incident. The truth is, the royal bedroom is less a sanctuary than a living monument to chaos. It's where power plays out in slippers, where secrets pile up in the wardrobe, and where even a king can find himself locked out of his own room again because someone changed the key for security reasons. Still, there are moments of comfort. A warm blanket on a chilly night, the soft purr of the royal cat, the guilty pleasure of reading love poetry by candlelight while pretending to study maps of Portugal. You may not always sleep well, but you sleep surrounded by the full, messy, unforgettable tapestry of royal life. So you roll over, fluff the pillows, and try to ignore the creaks, the drafts, and the suspicious scurrying under the bed. It's good to be king most of the time, just maybe not at bedtime. You are never alone. If you drop a fork, someone will report it. If you sigh too loudly, 3 ambassadors file a report. Welcome to life at the Spanish court, where privacy is a myth and everyone has an opinion about what you just sneezed. It's less a palace, more a surveillance state with slightly better chandeliers. If you've ever felt like people were watching you at work, multiply that by 100, add a powdered wig, and give everyone a notebook labelled Secrets and Slander. Congratulations, you're living Ferdinand VII's daily nightmare. Let's start with the courtiers. These are the men and women who orbit your throne like slightly anxious, overdressed moons. Their primary job? To hover, to flatter, to gather juicy tidbits and relay them in dramatic whispers to the nearest influential ear. If you take an extra slice of cake at dinner, by sunrise, the entire court is speculating about whether you're starting a new political faction, the Desertarians, perhaps. Your valet makes a note of your breakfast choices, and a duchess you've never met asks if you're feeling especially decadent this week. The courtier's secondary job is to complain, but always indirectly. Nobody ever says what they mean. Isn't it chilly in here? Might really mean, are you plotting against the king? The wine is excellent tonight could be code for the French ambassador is up to something. You spend half your life translating court compliments into possible death threats. But it's not just the courtiers you need to watch, it's the spies. Spies in Spain, spies in France, spies in your pantry. Some are actual professionals sent by foreign powers, lurking with coded messages and suspiciously well-tailored cloaks. Others are homegrown amateurs, bored cousins, ambitious butlers, and the occasional lady-in-waiting with a photographic memory and a talent for eavesdropping behind curtains. Rumours move through the palace faster than the morning bell. The cook hears you requested extra garlic, and suddenly the Russian ambassador is summoned for questioning. Someone spots you smiling at a British envoy, and within the hour, Madrid is convinced you're switching alliances. The chief of police comes for a friendly chat every time you change your hairstyle. Your barber, meanwhile, is probably the single most informed person in the country. He's heard more secrets than a confessional, and has the best poker face in Europe. Even your pets aren't exempt from suspicion. The palace parrot is said to have repeated a particularly scandalous rumor about your cousin and a tray of eclairs. The court cat slinks through the corridors, pausing at doorways just long enough for people to wonder if it's listening. Some believe it's a spy trained by the Portuguese. Others suspect it just really likes drama. It doesn't help that your daily routine is public property. Your schedule is posted for the whole palace to see, and still, someone is always loitering near your door by accident. Your evening walk turns into a parade of curious faces peering out from behind drapes. If you decide to eat lunch at a different time, a junior minister faints, convinced it's the signal for a coup. Gossip is the lifeblood of the court. New rumours sprout hourly, watered by speculation and pruned by scandal. Did you favour the Marquis at dinner? Is the Queen secretly learning Italian? Did the captain of the guard really lose his pants in Toledo? You have to admire the creativity. Sometimes you consider starting a rumour about yourself, just to see how long it takes to return, twisted, through the grapevine. The answer is usually 24 hours, and it always involves France. Of course, you try to keep secrets, but nothing is safe. Letters are steamed open, servants accidentally swap your tea. Trusted friends can become double agents overnight, especially if there's a promotion or a well-roasted pheasant involved. You learn to live with it, to smile blandly, nod non-committally, and never, ever write anything down unless you want to see it posted on the cathedral doors by morning. You start to value solitude, the rare moments you find yourself completely alone, just you, the flicker of a candle, and the faint hope that the royal bed won't squeak in a way that gives rise to yet another rumour. In the end, life at court is a noisy, nosy, nerve-wracking ballet. You dance, you dodge, you plot, and, above all, you perform. Because in Ferdinand's Spain, the only thing more powerful than a royal decree is a really juicy piece of gossip, and everyone, everywhere, is listening. Let's talk about medicine. Your court physician prescribes leeches, wine, and occasionally a stern talking to. Nobody mentions the gout. Welcome to the medical wing of the palace, a place where science and superstition are locked in a never-ending wrestling match, and where the best advice for a king is usually, don't catch anything you can't pronounce. If you're Ferdinand VII, your relationship with medicine is complicated, mostly because every remedy seems to involve either blood loss, mild intoxication, or a heartfelt prayer. It starts with the court physician, who has all the bedside manner of a medieval torturer and the diagnostic skills of someone who read half a book about humours and then lost interest. He's never without his trusty bag of leeches, a jar of something that smells suspiciously like regret, and a collection of healing herbs that mostly make your tea taste like the bottom of a barn. Whenever you feel ill, and you often do, because being king is stressful and your diet is 90% stew and anxiety, the doctor is summoned. He arrives dramatically, sweeping into your chambers as if auditioning for an opera. After a thorough inspection, say, breathe deeply. Which leg feels more royal today? He prescribes the usual bed rest, leeches, a bottle of fortified wine to restore the spirits, and a prayer to Saint Blaise. If you complain of anything more serious, like a headache or existential dread, he recommends a change of wig. The real terror, though, is the leeching. This is still the era when draining blood is seen as a cure for everything from a cough to an overabundance of melancholy. You grimace as the leeches do their work, while your physician assures you that you'll be as lively as a young stallion once the bleeding stops. You quietly suspect you'll be as lively as a puddle. Sometimes, they substitute a cupping treatment, which is just a fancy way of saying, let's see how many circular bruises we can give the king before lunch. Wine is the second most common prescription. Red wine for energy, white wine for the nerves, sherry for sleeplessness, and brandy for general malaise. If you're caught drinking water, your courtiers look alarmed. Surely only a very sick man would risk his health with such an unsafe beverage. The palace has more vintages than medical textbooks, and your liver is the true unsung hero of the Spanish monarchy. Then there's the matter of diet. Your physician has strong feelings about which foods are balancing for your royal humours. Some days it's boiled turnips, others an alarming quantity of salted fish. No matter what, he's certain you should avoid fresh fruit, unless, of course, he's been gifted a particularly nice basket of oranges, in which case they're suddenly essential to your recovery. Bread is good, but only if it's yesterday's bread. Butter is suspicious. Cheese is either medicine or poison, depending on the moon. Of course, there are other medical experts floating around the palace. The apothecary, who recommends mysterious powders. The midwife, who doubles as a gossip columnist. And the herbalist, who swears by compresses made from things you thought were weeds. Every one of them offers advice, and all of it seems to contradict the others. The only thing they agree on: avoid the French doctors. They're too modern, which, in this context, means they wash their hands. Gout is the illness nobody mentions. It's the elephant in the room, or rather, the swelling in the foot. You hobble around the palace, trying to look dignified as you clutch the furniture for support. If someone dares to bring it up, they're met with icy stares and polite coughs. Instead, your suffering is blamed on the Spanish climate, too much statecraft, or unlucky breezes from Portugal. As for mental health, that's not a thing. If you're anxious, you're told to take the air, write poetry, or play chess. If you're depressed, you're advised to eat more stew and avoid mirrors. By the end of any medical crisis, you're left with a new collection of bruises, a sore head, and a list of remedies that reads like a recipe for disaster. Still, you soldier on, fortified by wine, leeches, and the knowledge that no matter how bad things get, at least you're not trusting your health to the French. And so, Ferdinand, you face each day with the courage of a man who knows his next treatment could be anything from a hot bath to a cold glass of regret. Good luck, Your Majesty. Don't sneeze too loudly, or someone will call for more leeches. Pressure mounts. The dynasty must continue. No one cares that you haven't slept in 3 days. All eyes are on you and your ability to, deliver results. Welcome to the most awkward, exhausting, and closely scrutinized part of royal life, the business of producing an heir. If you thought palace intrigue was bad, just wait until you see what happens when the fate of the Spanish monarchy rests on your reproductive stamina. Forget privacy. Forget romance. From the moment you say "I do," for the first, second, or who's counting third time, the entire court is laser-focused on whether your family tree is about to sprout a new branch. It starts with subtle hints, gifts of baby blankets, offhand comments about how robust the Bourbon bloodline is, and a suspiciously large number of fertility icons left outside your bedroom door by well-meaning but deeply superstitious servants. Then come the less subtle gestures. Bishops offering special prayers at dinner, midwives lurking in the corridors, and your mother reminding everyone, loudly and frequently, about the importance of secure succession. You can't get through a breakfast without someone dropping a heavy hint about the need for a bouncing baby prince or princess. The pressure is everywhere. At court banquets, toasts are made to the health of the future heir, and at every social gathering, someone manages to bring up your wife's complexion, her appetite, or the latest in royal nursery trends. The palace staff develop their own betting pool on when an official pregnancy will be announced. The ladies in waiting take turns leaving pamphlets titled 10 Tips for Vigorous Monarchs on your nightstand. No, you're not imagining it. Yes, they really do have charts. Your personal life becomes a kind of public theatre. The king's marital schedule is reviewed by advisors who wouldn't recognize intimacy if it sat on their lap, and every late-night candle in your quarters sets off a fresh wave of speculation. If your wife is seen yawning at Mass, it's headline news. If she skips a dance, rumours swirl through Madrid by sunset. The royal physician hovers at every turn, armed with potions, tonics, and very invasive questions. He prescribes long walks, more wine, fewer baths, for reasons no one will ever explain, and at least 5 new herbal teas guaranteed to improve one's luck in the nursery. If a pregnancy is finally announced, the atmosphere changes from tense to outright electric. Bells ring, church candles are lit, and entire towns send baskets of slightly wilted flowers. But the celebrations are cautious. Everyone knows how precarious royal pregnancies can be. The Queen is now the star attraction, watched over by an army of nurses, nannies, and noblewomen who compete to offer the most old-fashioned advice. She is forbidden to run, ride horses, or eat anything remotely delicious. You're told to avoid loud noises and stressful conversation, which in the Spanish court is a physical impossibility. And heaven help you if something goes wrong. The blame game is immediate and all-consuming. Is it the king's fault? The queen's? The full moon? French spies? Every misfortune is analysed, dissected, and if possible, written up as a tragic sonnet to be performed at the next court soirée. Once an heir is born, life doesn't get any easier. The baby is immediately paraded before the court, swaddled in enough fabric to smother a small dog, and inspected by everyone from the archbishop to the palace baker. You're expected to look proud and alert, even if you haven't slept since the spring. The child's every cough, cry, and belch is a matter of state. If the royal infant develops a rash, 3 doctors and a priest are summoned within the hour. The gossip mill spins even faster. Does the baby look more like you, the Queen, or that one suspiciously handsome footman? As the years go on, the pressure doesn't fade. Now you must raise the heir, securely, safely, and without producing any major scandals. The tutors arrive, the governesses hover, and you begin to understand why so many royal portraits feature children who look vaguely terrified. Through it all, you maintain a brave face, juggling tradition, expectation, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll be allowed a quiet night with your growing family. But this is royal Spain, and the show must always go on. The dynasty depends on it, and so, apparently, does everyone else's happiness. No pressure. Political unrest, economic disaster, and you're just trying to find your slippers. Sometimes being king is about watching history unravel while you snack. Welcome to the Royal Court of Crisis Management. Or, as it's more accurately known, crisis management. If you're Ferdinand VII, the only thing falling apart faster than your kingdom is your breakfast pastry. Spain, once the world's greatest empire, is now a masterclass in how to lose everything without ever leaving the palace. Every day, the list of problems grows longer. Angry citizens, rebellious colonies, bankrupt coffers, and the constant dread that someone is going to set fire to the royal wardrobe, either as protest or just for fun. Let's start with the politics. Your ministers are a rotating cast of optimists, defeatists, schemers, and distant cousins who accidentally showed up at the wrong time and now run the treasury. The constitution changes so often that even the palace scribe is confused, and the only people who know what's actually going on are the gossipy market women outside the palace gates. Every political decision is a gamble. Raise taxes and the people riot. Lower taxes and the army can't afford gunpowder. You're supposed to lead, but most days it feels like you're just approving disaster after disaster while someone plays a slow, sad march on the royal harpsichord. Meanwhile, the Spanish economy islets call it vintage. The royal treasury is emptier than the palace punch bowl after a good wedding. Gold shipments from the Americas have slowed to a trickle, and what little remains gets spent on things like ceremonial swords, hats for the royal dog, and emergency repairs for that one hallway that keeps collapsing. You try to invent new taxes, but every time you do, another region declares itself independent, or worse, threatens to stop sending wine. There's a new scheme every week: national lotteries, compulsory cheese-making, and, briefly, the idea to lease Andalusia to the British, which even you agree is going a bit far. While Spain is busy fracturing, your colonies are even busier, revolting. South America, once your family's golden goose, is now a fireworks factory of rebellion. Messengers arrive daily with news that another general has switched sides, another city has fallen, and another portrait of you has been ceremoniously dunked in the river. You pretend to take it in stride, nodding wisely while secretly marking "Find Replacement Empire" on your to-do list. Diplomats urge you to negotiate. Advisors urge you to fight. Your mother urges you to get a good night's sleep and stop eating so many figs. Public unrest is everywhere. Madrid is restless. There are bread riots, tax riots, and occasionally riots about how many riots there are. At night, you lie awake listening to the distant roar of "Viva la Constitución" and wonder if maybe you should start attending those council meetings after all. The palace guards double their shifts. But really, they're just hoping the crowds stay interested in chanting and don't start hurling pastries at the front gate. Your family doesn't make things easier. Every cousin has an opinion on how to save Spain, and none of them agree. Some want a parliament, some want absolute power, some just want to leave the country and open a modest bakery in Lisbon. Court dinners turn into shouting matches about policy, only interrupted by your uncle reminding everyone that it wasn't like this under Charles III, which is both technically true and deeply unhelpful. Through it all, you maintain the one royal tradition that never fails: snacking through the apocalypse. Whether it's almonds during an emergency council or a sneaky midnight tart while rebels storm the city, you find small comforts wherever you can. You remind yourself, as Spain crumbles, that at least you still have wine, lace collars, and your slippers, even if you can't always find them. In the end, being Ferdinand VII during a crisis is mostly about watching history happen in real time, occasionally waving from a balcony, and hoping someone will invent a solution before lunch. The stakes are high, the chaos is endless, and the odds of keeping your kingdom together are only slightly better than your odds of finding matching socks. But hey, nobody said being king was easy. They just said you'd never be bored. Sleep is elusive. Courtiers pace the halls, conspiracies bloom in candlelight, and you count sheep, then order them exiled. Welcome to the true torment of royal life, the endless, sleepless nights of King Ferdinand VII. You might have imagined that being king means sinking into a bed as soft as a cloud, serenaded into slumber by a choir of gentle lutes. In reality, you're just as likely to be serenaded by the sound of urgent whispers, echoing footsteps, and the distant crash of someone knocking over a suit of armor in the dark. Sleep is less a nightly ritual, more an ongoing diplomatic negotiation, with your own mind, your mattress, and everyone in the palace who still isn't in bed. Let's start with the bed. It's technically enormous, technically regal, and technically stuffed with enough horsehair to qualify as an entire equestrian team. But after a lifetime of political drama, exile, and questionable stew, your back is less royal posture and more hunched medieval gargoyle. You try to get comfortable. You roll, you sigh, you adjust 12 separate pillows, one for your neck, one for your knees, and 10 for your anxieties. Every time you finally drift off, someone decides it's the perfect moment to check the locks or deliver a message marked urgent, which, in court speak, means minor gossip about the Portuguese ambassador. The palace is never truly asleep. The servants whisper in the halls, swapping secrets and complaints. The guards patrol, their boots thudding against ancient stone. Somewhere, a distant clock strikes 12, then 1, then 2. If you're lucky, you get a solid hour of rest before being awakened by the sound of your cousin's parrot reciting yet another scandalous rumor. The worst nights are when the wind howls through the castle, making the windows rattle and every shadow seem like a conspiracy come to life. It doesn't help that your mind is a beehive of worries. Will Spain revolt tomorrow? Will France steal your favorite slippers? Did you accidentally sign a decree promising to abolish cheese? You try the usual remedies. Hot milk, lukewarm by the time it gets to your room. A glass of wine, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, or the classic counting sheep. The problem is, you're the king, so if a sheep misbehaves, you have it sent to a distant province and spend the next 20 minutes wondering if that was a diplomatic mistake. Your wives are no help either. Sometimes they snore, sometimes they sigh, and sometimes they start late-night conversations about succession, which is guaranteed to keep you awake until dawn. When you finally doze off, it's only to be startled awake by the creak of the floorboards or the jangle of the royal cat, attempting yet another midnight conquest of your embroidery basket. Of course, there's always the option of royal bedtime stories. The chief historian occasionally reads you old tales of your illustrious ancestors, most of whom also couldn't sleep, thanks to rebellions, gout, and the occasional poisoned hot chocolate. These stories, instead of relaxing you, tend to produce fresh nightmares. You start to wonder if insomnia is just a hereditary perk of being a bourbon. Sometimes, desperate for rest, you roam the palace at night. You wander past the portraits, the ghostly echoes of your own footsteps, the only sound in vast marble corridors. You pause by the kitchen, contemplating a snack, but the cook has already locked everything up, citing last week's cheese incident. So you shuffle back to your room, only to find your dog has claimed the warmest part of the bed and is unwilling to negotiate. On the rare nights when sleep finally arrives, it's as fragile as your approval ratings. Dreams are vivid, balls that never end, dinner tables where the soup is always cold, parliaments made up entirely of angry chickens. You wake in a cold sweat, tangled in lace sheets, and briefly consider switching careers to professional night watchman. At least then, insomnia would feel productive. Still, you rise with the sun, bleary-eyed and already dreading the next bedtime. You put on your most regal robe, plaster on a smile, and face another day as the king who can conquer armies, navigate scandals and survive exile, but cannot, for love or money, I get a good night's sleep. In Ferdinand's Spain, sleep is the rarest luxury. And as you count the minutes until sunrise, you remind yourself that history only remembers the kings who stayed awake. Sitting still for portraits is your least favorite activity. You try to look regal. You mostly look constipated. Welcome to the least glamorous part of royal life, becoming immortalized in oils while every limb goes numb and you start to question all your life choices, including that third helping of stew at lunch. If you're Ferdinand VII, the royal portrait is not just a painting, it's a national event, a propaganda campaign, and a test of endurance that makes exile look relaxing. The process always begins with an announcement. His Majesty will sit for a portrait. The court springs into anxious action. Valets dust off your fanciest uniform, the tailor is summoned to tighten your breeches, again, and a delegation of artists arrives, each bringing an army of apprentices, easels, and buckets of pigment that cost more than most peasants' houses. The throne room is transformed into a painter's circus. Curtains are fluffed, candles are lit, and there's a heated debate about which side of your face looks most majestic. You're ushered to a chair, one with the comfort level of a marble bench, and told to pose. Not too stiff, not too relaxed, and please, Your Majesty, try to look like you're thinking deep thoughts, but not about stew. The painter, a master of patience and wishful thinking, instructs you to sit very still. Easier said than done when you're wearing 5 layers of brocade and enough medals to set off a metal detector from the next kingdom over. You try to channel regal dignity, but your nose itches, your elbow aches, and you are painfully aware of the fact that everyone in the room is staring at you, silently judging your posture. Hours pass. The painter squints, sighs, and occasionally mutters in Italian. Apprentices scurry about, mixing colours and fetching more coffee. Somewhere in the background, your mother is making helpful suggestions about how you should smile more, frown less, and maybe tilt your head like your grandfather did in that famous portrait. Yes, the one where he looks like he just swallowed a lemon. Your face begins to twitch, your leg falls asleep. You start to develop a new respect for garden statues, and an even deeper resentment for everyone who ever said, "Oh, how hard can it be to sit still?" Sometimes the court poet tries to lighten the mood with a reading, but you suspect he's just there to get a good look at your double chin for his next satire. And then comes the moment you dread, the reveal. The painter, after weeks of final touches, unveils the masterpiece to the court. The entire palace gathers for the grand event, craning their necks and whispering behind fans. You brace yourself. Will you look commanding or constipated? Proud or profoundly perplexed? Reactions vary. The sycophants declare it a triumph, the very image of Spanish strength. The jesters are already making sketches of you with exaggerated cheeks and crossed eyes. Your mother wipes away a tear and mutters about the glory days of portraiture. Your cousins giggle behind gloved hands. Meanwhile, you focus on your own face and realize you look less like a king and more like a man desperately trying not to sneeze. But the portrait is more than just an artistic challenge. It's a political weapon. Copies are sent across Europe, hung in every noble's parlour, and even sold as tiny miniatures to admirers and enemies alike. Your image is meant to project strength, stability, and wisdom, even if all you really want is to stretch your legs and eat a snack. Every brushstroke is scrutinized for signs of royal virtue, every shadow analyzed for hints of Bourbon cunning or, more often, royal indigestion. You get used to it, eventually. You master the art of the royal stare, a mix of boredom and vague superiority, and practice your slight smile in the mirror, which usually just looks like you're plotting an escape. And so, painting after painting, you leave your mark on history, not just in deeds, but in a parade of portraits that show you as the king you were, or at least the king you tried very hard to look like. If nothing else, you learn that legends are painted, not born, and if you look a little constipated in the process, well, history will just have to deal with it. The only thing scarier than a French invasion is a bored palace maid with a secret to sell. If you're Ferdinand VII, you learn early that the real battlefield isn't just out there on the plains of Spain, it's right here in the endless, echoing halls of your own palace. Here, every cough, yawn, and suspiciously late night is noted, whispered about, and, if you're unlucky, turned into a best-selling pamphlet by the next morning. Yes, you're king, but you're also the main character in the world's longest-running, least flattering reality show. Let's set the scene. You walk down a corridor, trying to look casual, regal, and definitely not guilty of anything, and out of the corner of your eye, you spot a maid darting into a side chamber. She's probably not even supposed to be there. But you can bet tomorrow everyone from the kitchen boy to the archbishop will know how long you paused outside the linen closet, and whether you looked anxious or merely suspiciously distracted. You haven't even committed a minor scandal yet, but the rumour mill is already grinding into overdrive. This is your daily life. Every moment under a magnifying glass. Every glance open to interpretation. The nobles gossip out of habit, the servants out of boredom, and your rivals out of pure competitive spirit. You might wish for more privacy, but even your confessor seems to have an agenda, especially when he brings up forgiveness right after a major dinner party. The problem isn't just that people talk, it's that they remember everything, embellish most of it, and then pass it along like a flaming torch at a festival. Did you drop your fork at breakfast? Must be nerves, possibly a sign of impending revolution. Did you skip Vespers? Clearly you're plotting something unholy. Was that a midnight stroll through the gardens? If the moon is out, you're probably meeting a secret lover. If it's cloudy, you're definitely hiding from your latest scandal. Even your attempts at damage control make things worse. If you deny a rumour, people assume you're lying. If you laugh it off, they suspect you're covering up. If you ignore it entirely, well, then you're clearly plotting your next scandal and are too busy to even care. It's a lose-lose-lose situation, and you're always playing catch-up. You develop coping strategies, of course. You try to keep your circle of confidence small, but that just means the leaks are harder to trace. You ask your most loyal servants to report any rumours they hear, only to discover they've started their own side business selling juicy tidbits to your rivals. You once considered planting a few outrageous stories yourself, just to see if the truth could hide among the lies, but the last time you tried that, the Spanish press had you married to the Russian ambassador's horse. The greatest threat, of course, isn't always the grand conspiracies, it's the little things. A sideways glance, an unfinished glass of wine, a slightly wrinkled collar, each one becomes the seed of speculation. watered by bored courtiers and nurtured by frustrated poets. You start to dread public appearances because every gesture, every syllable, is potential material for the next satire, the next song, the next biting cartoon. The palace maids, meanwhile, are the true intelligence service of Spain. They know which nobleman is cheating at cards, who's sneaking extra pudding from the kitchens, and who left a love letter under the wrong pillow. They know more about the affairs of state and affairs in general than most ambassadors. They are paid poorly but compensated richly in stories, and every whisper that passes through their hands eventually finds its way to the city, the court, and beyond. Sometimes you dream of a world without gossip, where your biggest problem is a badly tailored coat or a stubborn mouse in the pantry. But you know better. This is Spain, after all, and a king without rumours is like a court without intrigue, boring, suspicious, and definitely not to be trusted. So you learn to live with the paranoia. You keep your secrets close, your slippers quieter, and your trusted servants closer still. Because in Ferdinand's palace, the only thing worse than being the talk of the town is being forgotten. And in the end, a little anxiety is just the price you pay for wearing the crown and trying not to drop it where anyone can see. Religion and romance collide. Confessions get awkward. Blessings take longer. You wonder if saints ever had this problem. If you're Ferdinand VII, few things are as complicated as juggling the demands of the church with the passions of the palace. Spain is a place where faith is stitched into every corner of daily life. Cathedrals, processions, fasting days, and the perpetual scent of incense wafting through every room. But when you add royal romance, courtly affairs, and a steadily growing mountain of scandal, things get awkward faster than you can say Ave Maria. Let's start with the confessions. As king, you're expected to be a model of piety. Always at Mass, first in line for Holy Week processions, and on a first-name basis with at least 3 bishops. In practice, your spiritual calendar is almost as crowded as your marriage record. Your confessor is a patient man, but even he struggles to keep a straight face as you sheepishly list your most recent missteps, half of which involve misplaced affections, and the other half involve forgetting to show up for Vespers because you were busy debating stew recipes in the kitchen. Every Friday is a minefield. Fasting is the rule, but so is hosting banquets for visiting dignitaries who, unfortunately, have no interest in abstaining from ham, cheese, or rich desserts. You attempt to look penitent while sampling just a little of everything. Your chaplain hovers nearby, making notes and praying you'll someday discover moderation. You develop a complex system of plausible deniability. That's not a roast, it's medicinal. This is not wine, it's a blessed beverage. The marzipan is technically a fruit, Your Eminence. And then there are the blessings. Everything in your life requires one. New marriage? Blessing. New bedroom furniture? Blessing. New hunting dog? Definitely a blessing. Especially if you want to avoid another accidental incident with the royal shoes. The court spends more time organising blessings than actual weddings. There's even a special prayer for when you have to switch bedrooms after another domestic dispute. The church, for its part, is keenly invested in your marital and romantic adventures, if only for the sake of dynastic stability and a good sermon illustration. Every new engagement is cause for special prayers, every royal birth is a holy festival, and every annulment is met with diplomatic sighs and the frantic rewriting of genealogical charts. The bishops are always ready with advice. From choose a wife who fasts, to maybe don't court that Italian soprano. Their best advice, of course, is to confess early, confess often, and maybe keep the palace choir out of the private chapel for a few months. Religion and romance, naturally, can't help but collide in the royal bedroom. Before every wedding night, the local bishop drops by for a pep talk and a few carefully chosen verses. Every child born in wedlock is greeted with not just tears of joy, but at least 2 processions, 5 special masses, and a chorus of nuns singing outside your bedroom window at dawn. Even your most private moments can end up the subject of public prayer. Occasionally, Your romantic escapades are discovered by the church's ever-watchful network of informants, many of whom are disguised as gardeners, kitchen maids, or very talkative choir boys. A misplaced love letter or an ill-timed walk in the gardens can result in an emergency confession, followed by penance that sometimes feels designed to make you swear off romance entirely. It never works. But the most entertaining intersection of faith and love comes with the annual blessing of the marriages ceremony. You, your wife, or current contender, and a crowd of courtiers line up for a group blessing. The bishop prays for fidelity, harmony, and prudence, all while the choir tries not to snicker and your mother quietly prays for a miracle. In your rare moments of reflection, you wonder if saints ever had to juggle 3 wives, a mistress, and the threat of a papal letter all in the same week. You suspect not. You also suspect that even the most patient confessor secretly thanks heaven when you finally leave the chapel. Such is life when religion and romance are inseparable. You try your best, make your confessions, say your prayers, and hope that divine forgiveness extends to kings with complicated hearts and even more complicated bedroom schedules. You try to control your reputation. You fail. The history books take notes. Your enemies add footnotes. If you're Ferdinand VII, you spend an inordinate amount of your reign worrying about how you'll be remembered. After all, when your daily routine involves exiling half your cousins, getting outmaneuvered by the French, and marrying your way through the noble houses of Europe, leaving a good impression becomes a full-time job. You commission portraits, make grand proclamations, and try to ensure that the court historian is always in a good mood. But even the best royal PR team can't outpace the rumour mill, let alone the pen of a disappointed chronicler. The quest for a positive legacy begins early. Even as a boy, you're told, history will remember you. It's unclear if this is a promise or a threat. Every decision, from what you wear to how you address the city council, is performed with one eye on the future and one ear tuned to the latest gossip. Your advisors assure you that the people love a strong king, but you suspect what they really love is a king who distributes free bread and doesn't accidentally start a civil war before breakfast. You try to shape your own narrative, of course. Official decrees are carefully worded, portraits are endlessly retouched, and every royal ceremony is staged for maximum impact. You insist on being painted with your most regal expression, but by now the court artist has perfected the look of slightly worried but trying very hard. You write letters to foreign rulers filled with flowery praise, always hoping they'll be preserved for posterity and not, as it turns out, used as kindling during the next revolution. Still, your efforts are constantly undermined by your own court. Advisors are prone to leaking the wrong version of events. Nobles spread stories, most of them unflattering, about your dining habits, your romantic escapades, and that one time you got lost in your own garden and blamed the French ambassador. Even the palace pets seem to conspire against your legacy. Your parrot is rumoured to have once repeated a state secret at a garden party, and the cat has shredded more than a few important documents. The real historians, of course, are rarely on your side. They sit in the back of council meetings, quietly taking notes and occasionally exchanging knowing looks. Every blunder, every awkward moment, is carefully preserved in the official record, often with a generous helping of snide commentary in the margins. Your attempts at damage control, replacing chroniclers, commissioning new histories, only add fuel to the fire. The more you try to erase the past, the more people seem determined to remember it. Your enemies are even more ruthless. Every misstep is immortalized in footnotes, cartoons, and biting satirical songs. The French write entire pamphlets about your latest political blunder. British newspapers print wildly inaccurate accounts of your love life. Even your former friends find it convenient to recall old grievances when a new king needs a scapegoat. One rival famously wrote, "Ferdinand will be remembered as the king who reigned during dinner and abdicated before dessert." Harsh, but admittedly catchy. Sometimes you dream of a simpler legacy. Brave, general, wise reformer, beloved father of the nation. Instead, You're haunted by the suspicion that you'll be remembered for your socks, rarely matched, your stews, never hot enough, and your marriages, too many to count. You try to keep up appearances, smiling for the crowds, waving from balconies, and pretending not to notice the pamphlets circulating at every city square. In your quieter moments, you wonder what truly matters. Will the future remember your grand reforms, your epic mistakes, or just the endless parade of scandals and gossip? You hope for mercy from the historians, knowing full well that kings are rarely granted it. Perhaps, you think, all you can do is live boldly, eat well, and hope that somewhere between the lines of criticism, someone will find a story worth telling. So you keep working on your legacy, knowing that it's a battle you'll probably lose. History is written by the survivors, annotated by your critics, and endlessly revised by everyone who comes after. But one thing is certain, they'll never call you boring, and in the end maybe that's enough. Old age creeps in, appetite wanes. The scandals, however, just keep getting juicier. If you're Ferdinand VII, you never thought you'd make it to old age. Between the revolutions, the exile, and all those questionable midnight snacks, it seemed unlikely. But now, here you are, slower, softer, but somehow still the most gossiped. About man in Spain. Your joints ache, your eyesight blurs, and your famous appetite has withered to the occasional nibble, yet palace rumours multiply faster than your doctor's prescriptions. The palace has changed. Once, your nights were filled with feasts, intrigue, and the raucous laughter of half the Spanish nobility. Now, the halls are quieter, footsteps muffled, voices lowered in respect, or, let's be honest, fear that you'll overhear them discussing your latest misstep. The marble is colder. The draught is even more persistent. You find yourself sitting by the window, wrapped in a velvet robe, watching the world change while your court tiptoes around you, unsure whether to offer congratulations or condolences. Even your meals, formerly the highlight of every day, have shrunk. Once, a table groaned beneath the weight of breads, cheeses, and enough wine to drown your regrets. Now, the royal menu has been replaced by cautious soups and digestible puddings, and your cook eyes you with suspicion every time you ask for more than one slice of ham. There's talk of simple eating and good for the digestion, which is code for we don't want another scene at breakfast. Gone are the legendary feasts, replaced by solitary suppers and a suspiciously persistent offer of herbal tea. But while your stomach may have quieted, the gossip has not. In fact, it seems to be the only thing thriving in your golden years. Every minor health complaint, an afternoon nap, a missed mass, a limp, becomes the subject of fierce debate among the staff. Is the king dying? Is the king pining? Is the king planning to marry again, just to keep everyone on their toes? Your doctors make regular appearances, always with a new prescription and a new warning about the dangers of overexcitement. The courtiers whisper that you're still capable of scandal, and you're secretly pleased to know you haven't lost your touch. You spend more time reminiscing. The portraits in the gallery now seem to wink knowingly, each one a reminder of a different chapter. Young Ferdinand, awkwardly regal. Middle-aged Ferdinand, slightly rounder, always in the middle of a heated argument or a pastry. And now, the elder king, still clinging to the crown, if only because no one else has figured out how to wear it without causing a national incident. Your children and heirs visit more often, circling like slightly anxious storks, eager to check on your health, but more eager to check on the will. There are, inevitably, regrets. The reforms you never finished, the speeches you never gave, the apologies you never quite managed, the lovers you never wrote back to, and the ones you never should have written to at all. You wonder if history will remember you as the lover or the fighter, or just as the king who always seemed to be at the wrong dinner party. And yet, even in old age, the scandals persist. Your enemies seize on every cough, every missed appointment, and every mysterious visitor who comes calling after sunset. The palace press is relentless. The king's final romance? Will there be a fifth wedding? Is that really broth in his cup? You shake your head and sigh, marveling at how the public appetite for royal drama never seems to fade. Still, there's a strange comfort in it all. The palace remains alive, if only with the hum of curiosity. The world outside your window grows louder, more restless. But you, Ferdinand, lusty to the last, find peace in knowing your life has been anything but boring. Even as your strength ebbs, your legend only grows, one rumor at a time. And so you pass your days, a king diminished, but never ignored. Old age may claim your appetite, but the scandals, as always, are eternal. Welcome to the last chapter of the lustiest monarch in Spanish history. May the rumors never rest, even if you finally do. You're dead. But are you forgotten? Hardly. Your ghost is rumored to haunt the palace, occasionally rearranging the furniture and scaring the maids. For most people, death is the end of the story. If you're Ferdinand VII, it's just another chapter, one that involves less paperwork, but somehow even more confusion. The royal funeral is a grand, gloomy affair. Black horses, black carriages, black lace everywhere. The mourners try to look devastated. The priests try not to trip on the velvet carpets, and the court painter makes frantic sketches, desperate to capture your noble final expression before it melts into something closer to last night's indigestion. The kingdom goes through the usual motions. Bells toll, portraits are draped, and the official historian writes your name in the Book of Kings, then immediately starts making margin notes about your marriages. The gossips barely pause. Now that you're gone, every rumor gets juicier. Was the king really poisoned? Did he really leave a secret will? Did anyone ever solve the mystery of the missing silverware from the royal breakfast room? But your legacy, inconveniently, refuses to rest in peace. The palace staff begin to whisper. It starts small, a creaky floorboard here, a chilly draft there. Then things escalate. The maids swear they hear heavy footsteps at midnight, followed by the unmistakable jingle of medals and the low muttering of someone complaining about cold stew. The head butler insists he once caught a glimpse of your ghostly figure, rearranging the royal slippers in a more dignified pattern. The living are unnerved, but you, if the legends are true, are just getting started. It's said your spirit takes a special interest in state dinners, moving the place cards so your least favourite cousins have to sit together, and making sure no one ever finds the hidden stash of candied almonds behind the third tapestry. The palace cat, braver than most, sits at the foot of your old bed and purrs at the air, as if welcoming an old friend. Sometimes a draft slams a door or rattles a window, and someone mutters, "That's just the king," making his opinion known. The courtier class is divided. Some claim your ghost lingers because of unfinished business, too many love letters left unsent, too many arguments never resolved, or just a simple, stubborn refusal to leave the world's best wardrobe behind. Others suspect you're haunting the palace out of sheer curiosity, eager to hear what the next generation says about you when they think no one is listening. Meanwhile, the poets get to work. Ballads circulate about Ferdinand's restless spirit, the king who loved and lost, ruled and rued, and never quite managed to go quietly into the Spanish night. The tabloids, yes, even in the afterlife, print fresh tales. Ghost king spotted at midnight banquet. Royal portraits rearranged. Is Ferdinand to blame? Mystery scent of garlic bread lingers. Coincidence? Your heirs, predictably, are a bit unnerved. They triple lock the bedroom doors, commission extra masses, and occasionally consult a medium just to check if you're planning to haunt their council meetings. The priests recommend more incense. The kitchen staff just hope you'll stop hiding the cheese. Yet there's an odd comfort in it all. You may have made enemies, muddled through crises, and left the crown more tarnished than you found it. But you're certainly not forgotten. Even the most skeptical admit that palace life is never quite dull, not with a ghost who can't resist meddling from beyond the grave. Your afterlife, it turns out, is the final chapter in a royal soap opera, a mixture of farce, rumour, and the occasional moving candelabra. Whether you're rattling chains, straightening portraits, or simply hovering over the kitchens to supervise the stew, you ensure that the story of Ferdinand VII never truly ends. So you're dead, yes, but boring? Never. In death, as in life, you're impossible to ignore. Spain's most perverted king, haunting the history books, the palace halls, and, on especially dramatic nights, the dreams of everyone who ever had to explain your latest scandal. You're invited to a summit with Europe's finest monarchs, diplomats, and at least 3 people who definitely want your job. Your main diplomatic tool? Awkward silences and a refusal to ever read the agenda. Every negotiation ends with someone storming out, and somehow it's always you. Let's begin with the grand gathering. The high-ceilinged, drafty halls of Europe's most exclusive conference centres. Glittering uniforms, 2 tight sashes, and a sea of worried-looking secretaries line the walls. The rulers of the age are here, some with armies, some with gold, and a few with nothing but the world's most creative sideburns. And then there's you, Ferdinand VII of Spain, representing the proud, perplexed Bourbon dynasty, with all the confidence of a man who just remembered he left the oven on at home. You walk in fashionably late, tripping over your own ceremonial sword, muttering about the traffic in Madrid, and already forgetting why you agreed to this in the first place. The French king eyes you over his wineglass, the British ambassador polishes his monocle, and the Austrian emperor tries very hard to avoid direct eye contact. Every time you clear your throat, 3 interpreters reach for their smelling salts. Negotiations kick off with the reading of a carefully crafted agenda. You, naturally, ignore it. Why start with border disputes when there are so many more interesting topics, like who makes the best pudding or why the Prussian king's wig looks especially anxious today? Your diplomats squirm as you launch into an anecdote about palace plumbing that nobody understands. The Russian Tsar tries to steer the conversation back to international treaties. You counter with a story about your favorite stew recipe and somehow end up insulting the Dutch again. The main challenge of Bourbon diplomacy is subtlety. You have none. If you're bored, you yawn. If you disagree, you sigh loudly and ask if anyone else needs a break. Your version of negotiation is to state your demands, blink twice, and then pretend you're pondering world peace when you're actually counting the number of buttons on your neighbour's coat. The French are masters of nuance. The English speak in riddles. You, Ferdinand, specialise in accidental bluntness and unintended candour. Alliances, when they form, are shaky at best. The Austrians want you to back their latest plan for Italian reform, which mostly involves moving borders on a map until nobody knows where Milan is anymore. The Russians propose a mutual understanding, but only if you promise not to mention Poland ever again. The British offer vague friendship, heavy on the vague. You agree to everything and nothing at once, nodding sagely while secretly wondering if it's too late to sneak out for lunch. Of course, every summit descends into chaos eventually. The moment someone mentions colonial policy, you accidentally offend the Portuguese by mispronouncing their king's name and comparing his navy to a rowboat. Tempers flare, voices rise, and the Swiss quietly count the spoons to make sure nothing goes missing this year. Someone always storms out, and more often than not, it's you, claiming a sudden headache, urgent state business, or a moral objection to the dessert. Your staff scramble to repair the diplomatic fallout. Apologies are drafted. His Majesty meant no offence to the Belgian delegation or their cheese. Gifts are exchanged, and treaties are hastily revised. By the end of the week, you've managed to sign 3 non-binding agreements, anger 5 different monarchs, and accidentally promise Gibraltar to your second cousin. It's a record, even by Bourbon standards. And yet, somehow, you survive. Spain isn't entirely friendless, just frequently left off the invitation list for the next summit. The rest of Europe never quite knows what to make of you. Are you playing a long game, or just napping with your eyes open? The answer, as always, is a bit of both. So ends another chapter in the wild world of Bourbon diplomacy. More confusion than consensus, more gossip than grandeur. But hey, At least you remembered to pack your slippers, and your appetite for international drama is legendary. So, here we are at the end of another long, strange royal day. A day of intrigue, insomnia, and more matrimony than most mortals could stomach in one lifetime. If you made it through the scandals, the gossip, and the parade of ill-fated honeymoons, congratulations, you officially have more patience than half the Spanish court. Tonight, as you drift off in your clean sheets, maybe take a moment to feel grateful for modern plumbing, private bedrooms, and the complete absence of courtiers hiding under your bed, ready to report your every snore to the national press. Ferdinand VII lived in a world where privacy was a myth, gossip was a weapon, and royal comfort meant a mattress that probably squeaked with both guilt and the weight of unfinished business. He survived not just his enemies, but his own questionable judgment, a parade of spouses, and enough public embarrassment to fuel 1,000 history podcasts. So, as you tuck yourself in, remember, life might feel overwhelming, but at least you don't have to worry about a diplomatic crisis erupting in your bathroom, or waking up to discover you've accidentally been married again. History is, above all, proof that people have always been ridiculous, no matter how much lace or power they pile on. Here's to the resilience of our ancestors, who survived not only cold winters and suspicious stews, but also their own wild reputations. And here's to you, for surviving another day in the 21st century without needing a royal physician, an emergency wedding, or a perfumed handkerchief to fend off the palace smell. Sleep well, dream strange, and if you happen to meet the ghost of Ferdinand VII tonight, tell him you're not interested in being his next spouse. Good night.